Stages of Consciousness. Introduction. Welcome to the Middle Book, a space not of answers, but awakenings. What you're about to hear is not just a teaching, it's a mirror, a reminder, and a soft nudge back towards something you've always known but forgotten, that consciousness is not fixed. It moves, it spirals, it remembers. Most people will never question the shape of their awareness. They'll live entire lives behind invisible walls, mistaking reaction for choice, distraction for freedom, survival for life. They'll rise and fall, love and suffer, dream and despair, without ever realizing that what they call reality is just a single room in a much vaster house. This audiobook is for those who sense there is more. Not more things to achieve or more truths to memorize, but a deeper state of being waiting just beyond the noise. It's for those who've touched something infinite in meditation, in a heartbreak, in silence, and want to find their way back. It's for the ones who hear the soft whisper in their soul, you are not just this body, this mind, this story. You are awareness, clothed in flesh, temporarily dreaming limitation. In ancient teachings, from the Vedic seers to the Hermetic scribes, consciousness was not seen as a byproduct of the brain, but the very ground of being itself. The Upanishads spoke of layers of self, from the gross to the subtle, leading to the Atman, the undivided essence. Helena Blavatsky called it the evolution of the soul through planes of perception. Saint Germain taught that only through the purification of inner awareness could one access the flame of divine liberty. And modern mystics like Ram Dass, Rupert Spira, and Eckhart Tolle have echoed this same truth in new tongues. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one listening. But what does that really mean? It means you've been taught to look outward when the truth is inward. It means the feelings that haunt you, the thoughts that possess you, the identities you cling to, are not the end of your story. They're just chapters. And like any good story, there's a plot twist. Consciousness evolves, it matures. It grows from instinct into intuition, from fear into freedom. But not in a straight line, not like stairs, more like a spiral, each turn bringing you closer to the center you forgot existed. And here's what few will say. Most people never leave the first or second turn, not because they're incapable, but because no one ever told them that growth was possible or what it looks like. You were not handed a map. You were handed distractions. You were not shown the spiral. You were shown the screen. You were not taught to witness your awareness. You were taught to fix your appearance. This is the map they never gave you, the one that begins in fear but ends in stillness, the one that doesn't just climb to heaven but descends back to earth carrying light. There are 6 stages on this path, not in rigid order, not like levels in a game, but like rooms in a house you revisit with new eyes. You may find yourself moving up, then slipping back. That's not failure. That's how consciousness breathes. The first is survival, the primal scream of the body. The second is emotion, the storm of the heart. The third is intellect, the fortress of thought. The fourth is the heart awakened, where empathy dawns. The fifth is cosmic awareness, the collapse of separation. The sixth is a non-dual being, the place beyond the self. Only one of these leads to lasting freedom. But all are sacred. All are you. Each stage we'll explore is grounded in both science and spirit. You'll hear echoes of neuroscience and mythology, psychology and metaphysics. But more importantly, you'll feel something stir inside you, a memory, a knowing, a vibration. That's not a coincidence. That's you remembering yourself. Let go of needing to understand everything. Some truths cannot be grasped. They must be received. Sit back, breathe deep. Let the spiral unfold. This is not a lesson. It's a return. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Survival. The echo of instinct. Before philosophy, before language, before even a single question was ever asked, there was this: the beating heart, the sharp breath, the sudden flinch. The body knew how to survive before the mind knew how to think. It knew how to pull back from heat, how to hunger for nourishment, how to freeze in fear, how to flee from threat. And from this silent root, this ancient programming buried in the spine and the gut, our consciousness began its journey. Survival consciousness is not poetic. It does not pause to reflect. It is the scream in your bones when danger nears, the tightening of your chest in uncertainty, the flicker in your eyes scanning for what's next. In this place, everything is now. Everything is life or death. The brain stem, that old sentry of the body, watches tirelessly for what might harm. The limbic system remembers what caused pain, what signaled safety, and what led to pleasure, and it carves grooves deep into your nervous system. It doesn't care for logic, it only cares for protection. And for most people on Earth, this is the operating system running beneath the surface of their lives, not because they are broken, not because they are blind, but because evolution built it that way. Because once, long ago, it was necessary to wake each morning and fear the hunger, the hunt, the bite in the wind. Our ancestors survived not by pondering truth but by reacting quickly, instinctively. The one who paused to meditate on beauty was devoured. The one who flinched first lived. But here's the paradox. What once ensured survival now becomes the very trap that prevents awakening. The threats today are different. No saber-toothed cats, no daily chase for firewood or fresh water. And yet, your nervous system doesn't know the difference. It still floods your body with adrenaline when someone cuts you off in traffic. It still tightens your stomach when a bill arrives. It still registers rejection, a missed call, an ignored message, as a threat to your existence. Deep within, it is believed that being cast out means being left to die. This is the echo of instinct. It reverberates through modern life in disguised forms: anxiety that never quiets, hunger for validation that never satisfies, a constant scanning of the world for what might go wrong. People live entire lives in this low hum of alertness, never realizing that what feels like awareness is actually fear. What feels like motivation is often panic wearing a mask. This level of consciousness is compelling because it feels real. It floods the body with sensation. It gives urgency to decisions. It mimics aliveness, but it is not freedom. It is reactivity. When a person is trapped here, they believe every thought they think, every emotion they feel, and every impulse they follow. They don't pause to ask, who is witnessing all of this? Because there is no space for the witness to emerge. There is only the flood of needs, of judgments, of fears. The ancient mystics spoke of this as the lowest realm, not in judgment, but in understanding. The densest vibration, the realm of contraction. Helena Blavatsky referred to it as the material sheath of the soul, the mask of matter that must one day be transcended. In Hermetic teachings, this is the plane of inertia, where spirit is fully asleep within form. But even here, even in the depths of this dense experience, there is something sacred. Because consciousness is never absent, it is only dreaming. And you, even if you've lived decades from this place of fear and instinct, are not lost. You are simply nested in the first room of the house. The lights are dimmed, the air is heavy, but you are still here, breathing, listening, opening. How do you know if you're still living in this place? It shows up in your patterns, in how you react when things don't go your way, in how quickly anger sparks, or how desperately you seek approval. It shows in your habits, the scrolling, the overworking, the addiction to noise. It reveals itself in your relationships, where love becomes a contract for safety instead of an offering of presence. And yet, there is no shame in this, no failure. It's only the first song the soul sings, one of tension, of urgency, of the will to stay alive. But life was never meant to be a prison of survival. It was meant to evolve. Something in you already knows this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be seeking. You wouldn't be listening to words that speak of spirals and stillness and the soul's remembering. That seeking is the first crack in the armor, the first ray of light through the cave wall. You wouldn't be asking what else is there, unless something in you had already glimpsed it. This stage cannot be skipped, and it should not be shamed. Survival is sacred. The body that carries you has fought for your presence on this earth through endless storms. It has endured, it has reacted, it has protected. Bow to it. But do not let it rule you forever, because the soul does not thrive in fear, it thrives in expansion, and to expand, you must begin to see the fear, not as your identity but as a signal, a messenger, a protector that has outlived its use. There is no technique to escape survival. There is only awareness. Watch the instinct arise. Feel the panic before the meeting, the jealousy before the silence, the hunger before the binge. Don't judge it, just notice it. In noticing, the space around it grows. That space is you, the real you, the witness. And in that space, a new possibility begins. The teachings of the East often remind us, you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the emotions, you are the one who sees. And the one who sees is not afraid. But the one who is afraid must still be honored, because that part of you too is divine. So let this not be a war against survival, but a blessing. Let your survival story be the root from which your consciousness rises. Let it be the soil that nourishes the higher stages. And when you feel the old instincts clawing their way back, the tight chest, the clenched jaw, the silent scream, don't run. Don't resist. Just remember. Remember that you are no longer inside the cage. You're standing at the edge of it with the key in your hand. And the spiral has only just begun. Chapter 2. Emotion. The storm behind the smile. Once the body no longer trembles from the fear of death, once the stomach is fed and the shelter secured, something new begins to stir. A different kind of force, more subtle but no less powerful, rises from within. It is no longer the instinct to survive. It is the longing to be seen, to be held, to be loved. And with it comes the second veil of human experience, emotion. If survival is the echo of instinct, emotion is the cry of the heart still aching to know itself. It floods the body like a tide, anger, jealousy, joy, sadness, pulling us into stories, into desires, into loops of memory that play like old songs with no end. And most people, having escaped the battlefield of pure survival, find themselves here, caught in the storm of emotional consciousness. Here, the threat is no longer the tiger in the bushes. It's rejection, abandonment, betrayal, the pain of not being chosen, the sting of a cold glance, the hollowness of an unmet expectation. It's the way your stomach drops when they stop replying, or how your chest tightens when they praise someone else instead of you. You may call it sensitivity or vulnerability or love, but beneath the surface it is the same survival mechanism, dressed now in emotional clothing. The tribe has changed, but the fear is the same. Because once, to be cast out was death. And still, somewhere deep in your DNA, the nervous system responds as if the stakes have not changed. A judgmental word burns like fire. A friend's silence feels like exile. An unresolved childhood ache is activated by a passing comment. You are not overreacting. You are simply still wired for survival, but now the battlefield is emotional, not physical. The ancient mystics knew this terrain well. They spoke not only of the body, but of the subtle energies that surround it, the astral plane where emotions take shape and color and form. Helena Blavatsky described this level of consciousness as the sheath of passion and desire, filled with echoes of past lives, karma, and patterns yet unresolved. In the Buddhist teachings, this is the realm of clinging, where suffering begins not from pain itself, but from our resistance to it. Emotion is not the enemy, but our identification with it becomes a prison. And yet it feels so real, so immediate. When you're in the grip of anger or heartbreak, there is no spaciousness, no higher ground. There is only the swirl, the storm, the voice in your head that repeats, "They hurt me, they don't love me, I'm not enough," becomes the only voice you hear. You act from it, you speak from it, you live inside it. And the deeper tragedy is this: it feels like it's you. But you are not your emotions. You are the sky. Emotions are the weather. The limbic system, especially the amygdala, scans the world constantly for cues of safety or danger. A raised eyebrow, a missed invitation, a forgotten birthday, all can trigger the same circuitry that once saved our ancestors from wild animals. But the body doesn't know the difference between a bear and a breakup. It just feels like a surge. And the story the mind builds around it, I was abandoned, I was betrayed, I am unlovable, is how the trap is built. The emotional self forms early. It is sculpted by caregivers, by rewards and punishments, by words spoken or withheld. And over time, the child begins to believe that love must be earned, that emotions must be controlled or hidden, that vulnerability is dangerous. So we learn to perform. We learn to please. We build masks, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to be safe. And then, decades later, we wonder why we still feel hollow even when we succeed. Why a compliment doesn't sink in. Why love feels fleeting. It's because the inner child is still waiting to be seen, not for what they do, but for what they are. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And in this emotional stage, the unconscious runs the show. It whispers in your relationships, in your choices, in your dreams. It paints the world with projections. You don't see things as they are, you see them as you are. If you believe you are unworthy, even love will feel like danger. Even joy will feel suspicious. This is why relationships become battlegrounds. Because you are not meeting someone as they are, you are meeting them through your wounds, through your longing, through your fear of being left again. And yet, emotion is not something to escape. It is sacred. It is the river that moves us, the song that reminds us we are alive. But it must be felt fully, not followed blindly. You are allowed to cry without collapsing, to feel without fusing, to rage without destroying. The work is not to suppress your emotions, but to become aware of the one who is feeling them. This is the crack in the second veil. When you realize you can observe your own heartbreak, when you notice your anger rising instead of being consumed by it, this is the moment consciousness begins to loosen from the storm. In the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, the question, "Who is it that is feeling this?" becomes the sword that cuts through illusion. Not to detach or disassociate, but to recognize, I am the witness of this wave, not the wave itself. And as this awareness grows, so does compassion. Because once you see your own suffering clearly, you begin to see it in others. You stop needing them to be perfect. You stop taking everything personally. You realize that the one who hurt you was hurting too, that everyone is carrying something invisible, that we are all, in some way, walking wounded. This softening is the first glimpse of the next stage, a shift from judgment to presence, from defense to empathy. And in this softening, something new is born. The heart begins to wake up. But before we ascend, we must return, again and again, to meet our emotions with honesty. Not to fix them, not to transcend them, but to hold them, to learn their language, to hear what the anger is guarding, to see what the sadness is pointing to love the one inside you who still believes they must earn everything they receive. True awakening is not the escape from feeling, it is the expansion of capacity to feel more deeply without losing yourself. So when the storm rises again, as it will, do not run. Sit with it. Let it speak. Let it break open. And listen, not for the scream, but for the truth beneath the scream. The storm is not your enemy. It is your initiation. And when the clouds begin to part and the sun touches your skin again, you will realize the storm never wanted to destroy you. It came to reveal you. You are not your pain. You are the one who holds it with love. And the spiral continues. Chapter 3. Intellect, the golden cage of the mind. There comes a moment on the path, quiet, exhilarating, when you begin to pull back from the storm. The emotional waves no longer drown you. The patterns that once owned you become visible. You notice, you name, you reflect, you begin to think, and for the first time, you believe you are free. This is the entry into the third stage, the realm of intellect, of reason, of analysis. It is the birth of the thinking self, the I who defines, who dissects, who seeks to make sense of the chaos left behind by the body and the heart. It is a glorious ascent. Compared to the rawness of survival and the volatility of emotion, the world of the mind feels like a sanctuary. It gives structure to experience. It offers language where once there was only sensation. It builds a scaffolding of beliefs, systems, frameworks, and identities. Here, the world becomes understandable, predictable, masterable. You read more. You question more. You begin to hunger not for safety or affection, but for knowledge, for clarity, for truth. You discover psychology, philosophy, and science. You recognize patterns in behavior, in culture, in thought. The same reactivity that once ruled your life now becomes the subject of your observation. You step back from it. You name it. You begin to feel awake. And in many ways, you are. This stage is a powerful leap forward on the spiral of consciousness. The intellect is a sacred gift. It's the faculty that allowed the ancients to chart the stars, the mystics to encode their visions into language, the sages to pass wisdom through scroll and sutra. Reason is not the enemy. It is the bridge that takes us out of unconsciousness. The problem is that the bridge is not the destination. The modern world worships this level. It builds entire civilizations on the altar of intellect. From the Enlightenment to Silicon Valley, the message is the same. If we think clearly enough, if we collect enough data, if we build strong enough systems, we will transcend suffering. We will control life. We will finally be at peace. And so we fill our lives with ideas, with theories, with facts. We seek to know in order to feel safe. But beneath the sophistication, the same old fear lingers, the same ache for control, the same terror of uncertainty. You begin to define yourself by what you know. What do you believe? You become your opinions, your credentials, and your achievements. You build an identity out of thought, and without noticing, the walls of this new self become another cage. It is a golden one, to be sure. Polished and decorated, but a cage nonetheless, because the intellect, for all its brilliance, cannot feel. It can name emotion, but it cannot enter it. It can describe beauty, but not touch it. It can map the terrain of life, but never be life. And so, those who live too long in this stage become disembodied. Their words sound wise, but their hearts feel distant. They speak of love with cool precision. They analyze suffering with detachment. They become experts in ideas, but strangers to presence. In spiritual circles, this is the realm of the armchair mystic, the one who reads every sacred text, who can quote sages and scriptures, but cannot look a stranger in the eyes with tenderness. They have replaced vulnerability with vocabulary, depth with definition. Again, this is not incorrect. It is merely one more segment of the spiral. It is necessary to improve the mind. It is necessary to develop the intellect, but only in order to surrender it later. According to Descartes, I think, therefore I am. The mystic, however, is aware that I am, therefore thought arises. The thought is preceded by something, prior to the label, prior to the identity, and you are that something. This region of the brain, known as the default mode network in neuroscience, is in charge of self-referential thought. We ruminate while it's active. We make plans. We dwell on the past and make predictions about the future. However, this network becomes quiet in the minds of skilled meditators. The never-ending tale of me becomes softer, and something more expansive appears in that quiet. This is why the intellect, when left unchecked, becomes a loop, a hall of mirrors. It seeks answers to questions it cannot resolve. What is death? What is consciousness? What is the meaning of life? It builds new words, new theories, new paradigms, but always within the same structure of self and separation. It cannot see beyond itself. And so the trap tightens. Intelligence becomes identity. Skepticism becomes superiority. Vulnerability becomes weakness. You begin to believe that knowing is enough, that understanding is freedom, but you cannot think your way into wholeness. You must feel it. You must be it. The teachings of the Tao say, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. In other words, the deepest truths cannot be captured in language. They must be experienced directly. The intellect can point to the moon, but it cannot become the moon. At some point, the seeker must put down the books, close the journals, silence the questions, and feel. This is when the heart begins to whisper again. After the mind has exhausted itself in its search, the heart begins to speak, not in words, but in presence, in stillness, in the warmth of a gaze, in the tremble of truth. You begin to see the limits of logic. You begin to feel a longing for something softer, something fuller. You begin to crave not more knowledge, but more intimacy with life, with people, with God, with the self that lives beneath the thinking mind. And so the spiral calls again. You will not lose your intellect. You will not discard it. You will simply return it to its rightful place, not as master, but as servant, not as home, but as a compass. You will continue to think, but with love, to question, but with humility, to speak, but with presence. The golden cage will always be there, but now you hold the key. And on the other side of thought, the heart is waiting, not as an emotion, but as a way of seeing, a way of being. You are ready to walk through that door. Chapter 4. The Heart, where the self dissolves. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when the mind, once proud of its clarity, begins to taste the hollowness of its own answers. The concepts are sharp, the framework is elegant, but something essential is still missing. There's a hunger, not for more knowledge, but for more presence. A longing, not to explain life, but to feel it. And this longing does not arise from the brain. It rises from a deeper place, from the heart. Here begins a sacred shift, not upward but inward, not toward mastery, but toward surrender. After the body's survival and the heart's storms, after the mind's structure and sophistication, there awakens a quieter light, a knowing without words, a love without reason. The intellect calls it foolish. The ego calls it weakness. But something in you knows, this is the doorway to freedom. To enter this space is to feel the walls of the self begin to thin. The sharp lines drawn by thought, me and them, right and wrong, success and failure, begin to blur. You no longer see others as objects, roles, or categories. You begin to sense them as reflections of yourself, not metaphorically, literally. A child's laugh moves you to tears. A stranger's pain echoes in your chest. A single act of kindness lingers for days. Compassion becomes not a decision, but a reflex. This is the realm of heart-centered consciousness, the dimension where empathy is not cultivated, it simply emerges, where judgment begins to dissolve and presence becomes the only language worth speaking. For some, this shift is sudden, a heartbreak, a death, a moment of silence so deep it rearranges everything. For others, it comes slowly, like dawn filtering through a dense forest. But however it arrives, it changes you. Because once the heart opens, the game of ego loses its thrill. The trophies you chased begin to gather dust. The arguments you once needed to win now feel like noise. The desire to be right is replaced by the desire to be real. In this space, love is no longer a transaction. It's not earned, deserved, or measured. It simply is. Like gravity, like light, you feel it not as an emotion but as the very fabric of existence. It moves through you, it becomes you. And from that state, everything begins to reconfigure. You no longer help others to feel worthy. You help because you cannot not help. Their joy is your joy. Their pain is your pain. This is not martyrdom. It's unity. The soul remembers its true size. St. Francis of Assisi once prayed, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." This is that prayer embodied, not as a performance, not as virtue signaling, but as a natural extension of who you are becoming. Heart-centered consciousness does not ignore pain. It holds it. It does not bypass suffering. It meets it with presence. And in that meeting, something alchemical happens. Suffering becomes sacred, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer resisted. You begin to understand what Rumi meant when he wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." The heart doesn't just feel, it sees. It sees past the masks. It sees past the roles. It recognizes the soul hiding behind the armor, and it offers sanctuary. Even when the world cannot, especially when it cannot. This stage is where the great spiritual traditions converge. In Christian mysticism, it is the compassion of Christ, the ability to love beyond betrayal. In Buddhism, it is metta, loving kindness offered to all beings without exception. In the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, it is acting from duty without attachment to reward, serving from love, not ego. But heart-centered consciousness is not sentimental. It is not soft in the way the world thinks of softness. It is fierce. It is rooted. It does not seek validation. It offers love, even when unreturned. It speaks the truth, even when uncomfortable. It forgives not because it forgets, but because it understands that holding on to pain is its own kind of bondage. When you live from the heart, you start to feel that you belong, not to a group, not to an ideology, but to life itself. The trees begin to speak in silence, the sky becomes a mirror, the breeze on your skin feels like a whisper from the divine. It is here, in this state, that awe returns, not the awe of spectacle, but the awe of presence, of being here, of being at all. And this presence heals. It doesn't fix, but it integrates. The parts of you that were abandoned by the intellect, rejected by society, or shamed by family, these parts begin to thaw in the warmth of the heart. They come forward not to take over but to be held, and the one holding them is not the ego. It is something deeper, something sacred. This is the true beginning of spiritual maturity, not the gathering of insights but the dissolving of separation, not climbing above others but seeing no other at all. But the heart is not an endpoint. It is a portal, because as vast as this space feels, there is something beyond even empathy, beyond compassion, a dimension where love does not just connect things, it reveals that there were never two things to begin with. That next realm is rare. It cannot be summoned or forced. It arises when the heart has done its work and surrendered its crown, when even the giver dissolves and only giving remains, when even the lover disappears and only love remains. But for now, if your heart has been stirred, if you've wept unexpectedly, or smiled at a stranger, or felt your chest ache at beauty, know this: you are already on the path. Stay open, stay soft, stay grounded. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are strong enough to live without armor, and that is the power the world needs most. Chapter 5. Cosmic Consciousness. The Collapse of Separation. There is a silence so deep it cannot be heard, only known. It lives beneath the noise of thought, beneath the fluctuations of emotion, beneath even the warm pulse of the heart. It is not found in the mind, nor in the self, nor in any place with a name. But when it arrives, everything else fades. The old lines blur, time softens, space bends, and the illusion of separation begins to unravel. This is the threshold of cosmic consciousness, not just another step on the ladder of awareness, but a new way of being, a vision so vast it no longer has a center. What was once experienced as me, looking out into the world, becomes the world becoming aware of itself through me. The gaze no longer originates from the body, it flows through it. The self becomes transparent, and in its place, a vast presence radiates, all-embracing, wordless, free. In this state, duality collapses. There is no longer inside and outside, self and other, observer and observed. There is only life, aware, intelligent, infinite, unfolding as every breath, every tree, every flicker of light and shadow. You don't see unity, you are unity. And yet this shift is not an escape, it's a remembering. Because in truth, this is what you've always been. Before the body, before the name, before the wound and the armor and the story, you were this. Pure awareness, unborn and undying, playing the game of forgetting to experience the joy of remembering. Cosmic consciousness is not reached by effort. It is not the reward for years of practice or a prize for the most virtuous. It arrives when the conditions are right, when enough layers have fallen away, when the longing to control dissolves into the willingness to surrender. And in that surrender, the veil parts. Briefly, or for what feels like forever, you see, And what you see is impossible to describe. You see the breath of stars moving through your chest. You see the eyes of the beloved in every stranger. You see the divine dancing behind every leaf and in every silence. You feel a peace so wide it holds even the world's pain without flinching. You no longer believe everything is one. You know it. Not as an idea, but as the direct, unmistakable experience of reality. Mystics throughout time have described this state in hushed reverence. Plotinus called it the One, the source of all multiplicity. The Sufis spoke of it as the wine of union, where lover and beloved merge. The Vedantic sages called it Brahman, the absolute beyond all qualities yet present in every form. And in the West, poets like Whitman and mystics like Meister Eckhart glimpsed it in flashes so powerful they spent their lives trying to give it voice. Even modern science touches the edges of this truth. Neuroscientists studying long-term meditators have found that during moments of profound unity, the default mode network, the brain's system for constructing personal identity, goes quiet. The chatter stops. The boundaries dissolve. What remains is not blankness, but a glowing fullness. The self evaporates, and the world becomes luminous. This is not a hallucination. It is not delusion. It is the direct perception of what has always been hidden beneath the veil of thinking. And in this vision, everything changes. Your priorities fall away like old skin. What once seemed urgent, status, possession, praise, becomes a game you no longer need to play. What once seemed separate, nature, others, even death, becomes part of a great unfolding that no longer threatens you. You are no longer a person moving through the world. You are the world, expressing itself as a person. This experience does not always last. It can come in meditation, in a moment of deep surrender, in nature, in grief, in stillness. Sometimes it fades, sometimes it returns. But once tasted, it leaves an imprint on the soul. And that imprint is enough to transform everything. You may return to your personality, your roles, your name, but they no longer define you. You wear them lightly. You serve without attachment. You love without fear. You live without needing to grasp, because you know that everything you see is you, and everything you are is the universe in motion. And yet even here a deeper mystery remains, because as vast as this state is, there is still a sense of something being experienced. There is still a witness. There is still the quiet awareness of being aware. And that too must one day dissolve. But before we step beyond, let us linger here a moment longer, in this holy stillness, where the boundaries have collapsed, where breath and starlight are not different, where the cosmos is not distant but present in your very marrow. This is not the end of the journey, but it is the place where the path becomes light, where the destination stops mattering, where the spiral opens wide into eternity. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. You are not becoming one. You have always been one. All that remains now is to see what lies beyond even this. Chapter 6. Non-dual Awareness. The Disappearance of the Self. What if all of it, the striving, the healing, the thinking, the surrendering, was never meant to bring you closer to some distant goal, but only to peel away the illusions that hid the truth you always carried? What if awakening is not a becoming but an unbecoming, not a rising but a falling inward? In the final and rarest stage of consciousness, there is no more becoming. There is only being, and even that word, being, is too large to grasp and too small to contain what unfolds here. This is the stage of non-dual awareness, the point at which the final veil lifts and even the witness dissolves. It is the end of the game of self and the quiet return to what was never lost. Pure, centerless, unbounded awareness. Here there is no one left to awaken. There is no longer a you watching the experience. There is only experience. Only the now. Only the timeless hum of reality without edges, without separation, without form. This is not an altered state. It is not a trance or ecstasy or a spiritual high. It is what remains when every state has been seen through. It is not peace as a feeling. It is peace as the ground of all feelings. Not love as an emotion, but love as the nature of what is. You cannot describe non-dual awareness. You can only dissolve into it. Words break here. Concepts collapse. Even the most sacred teachings fall silent, because all teachings point to this. None contains it. Imagine trying to describe the sky to a fish who has never left the ocean. Imagine trying to explain emptiness as fullness. Infinity is stillness. Unity is not as oneness between two things, but the absence of two entirely. This is the paradox, the mystery, the truth that cannot be held. There is no self here, not even a higher self. Not even a soul observes the show of life. There is only the dance, and even that word, dance, suggests movement, suggests time. But non-dual awareness is beyond even time, beyond perception, beyond mind. And yet, it is intimately present. It is the presence within all presences, the silence within all sounds, the nothingness that gives rise to everything. Ramana Maharshi, the great non-dual sage, was once asked, "Who are you?" And he replied, "I am that I am." Not as a name, but as a pointer to the mystery, a mystery so simple it cannot be seen, so immediate it is always overlooked. Many who walk the path never reach this point, not because it is unreachable, but because the self is reluctant to disappear. Even in spiritual seekers, the ego takes refuge in subtler forms, in wisdom, in humility, in service. It survives as the one who is awakening. But in non-dual awareness, even that dissolves. There is no specialness here, no hierarchy, no guru to follow, no student to learn. There is nothing to achieve. There is nothing to lose. There is only this. And this includes everything. The rising and falling of thoughts, the laughter of a child, the ache in your back, the rustle of leaves, the grief that comes without warning, the joy that erupts without cause. There is nothing outside this awareness, because there is no longer an inside. All opposites collapse, all distinctions dissolve. You may still speak, you may still act, but not as someone. Rather, life flows through form effortlessly, spontaneously, without identity, without resistance. There is no doer, only doing, no thinker, only thinking, no lover, only loving. This is not a state that can be manufactured. It cannot be willed. It cannot be reached through effort, because effort belongs to the realm of the self. It arrives when the final letting go happens, when the final breath of striving releases into surrender, and sometimes it is not even noticed until afterward, a silence so vast it contains even the forgetting. And still, you will return. You will return to the body, to the mind, to the world of names and forms, because the spiral never ends. Life will still call you. The dishes will still need to be washed. Pain will still visit. Bills will still arrive. People will still misunderstand you. But something has changed. You know that none of it is separate. That the self who suffers is a character in a divine play. That even suffering is not outside awareness. It is awareness, momentarily taking the form of pain. You no longer need to escape being human, because now you see, humanity was never the problem. Separation was. And so you live differently. You move through the world with more spaciousness. You speak with more gentleness. You listen with more depth. You hold suffering with less fear. You embrace joy with less clinging. You let life pass through you like wind through an open window. This is not detachment. It is intimacy. Not floating above the world, but dissolving into it. And still, there is more. The spiral continues. Because even non-dual awareness is not an endpoint. It is simply the falling away of all endpoints. It is the wide open sky after every wall has fallen. It is what has always been here, waiting patiently beneath the layers of survival, emotion, intellect, and love. You do not arrive here. You return. You do not master it. You recognize it. You do not hold it. You are it. And even as these words end, this remains. The silent witness that has never changed. The presence that has never left. The truth that needs no proof. You. Final chapter. Return with light. Living the spiral. You've touched something real now. Not an idea, not a theory, but a presence beneath the noise, a vastness behind the name you've been answering to for so long. You've followed the thread inward, through instinct, through feeling, through thought, through love, through unity, and now you stand in the soft echo of everything you once believed you were. And yet, life calls you back. The dishwasher still hums. Someone is still waiting for your reply. The ache in your lower back still visits after a long day. There are conversations to have, traffic to sit in, laughter to share, and tears to release. The journey didn't remove you from the world. It just opened your eyes to what the world truly is, and now it asks you to return, not to forget what you've seen, but to carry it with you. Few seekers are informed of this fact. Awakening is not the end. It marks the start of a life that is more truthful. Because being human is not diminished by the spiral. You become more human as a result. It is defined by your soul, not by duties, rituals, or obligations, as the world would have you believe. Remembering the supernatural in the mundane is part of being human, to recognize the sacred within the ordinary, to realize that the eternal and the transient are not two things, and to grasp them both in your hand. You'll tumble once more, into terror, into a hunger, into diversion. You'll forget. Old stories will make you forget who you are. Familiar faces from the past will knock on your door. The ego will try to make you feel as though something is lacking, and you could think so for a while. Failure is not what this is rhythm. Consciousness goes out and comes back, much like the tide. Clarity fades and then reappears, much like the moon. Peak states are not where you are supposed to reside. The valleys are supposed to be touched by those states, to allow the loneliness to be lessened by the recollection of unity, to allow the clamor of daily life to blend with the spaciousness of presence. The deeper mastery lies in how deeply you return, not how high you can climb. Return to the pain with more compassion. Return to the joy without clinging. Return to the body with reverence. Return to the mind with gentleness. Return to others with kindness, especially when they don't understand what you've seen. And most of all, return to yourself, again and again, not to fix but to witness, not to control but to hold. You are not here to stay above the storm. You are here to walk through it with open eyes and a steady breath. You are not here to outgrow the world. You are here to illuminate it from within. You are not here to transcend humanity. You are here to embody divinity as a human being. This is what the spiral reveals. Each time you return, you do so with a little more light, a little more space between thought and action, a little more silence inside your voice, a little more strength in your softness, a little more love where judgment used to live. You are not who you were. Even if nothing has changed on the surface, even if the world looks the same, you are different. And that difference is the seed of something sacred. Let it grow. Let it touch how you speak, how you eat, how you rest, how you love. Let it become the way you walk through your life. Do not try to hold on to what you've experienced here. You don't need to. What is real does not need to be remembered. It reveals itself in how you show up, in how you listen, in how you sit with silence when there's nothing left to say, in how you hold someone's hand when they're breaking, in how you bow quietly to the mystery that breathes through it all. You've seen that the self is not the final truth, but neither is its disappearance. The real miracle is that you can taste infinity and still show up fully in the finite, that you can dissolve into everything and still wash the dishes, still tell a friend, "I love you," still weep when beauty finds you. That is the return. That is the spiral. And the spiral never ends. So don't search for perfection. Don't try to stay high. Don't try to become untouchable. Become real. Become rooted. Become radiant in your flaws. Let your presence be what heals, not because you try, but because you are. If this journey has stirred something inside you, it's because something inside you was already waking. You were never asleep, just dreaming. You were never lost, just walking through a darker part of the forest. And now that you've seen the clearing, you will always know the way back. There will be more teachings, more insights, more spirals to walk. But for now, Let this truth settle deep in your bones. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to love it awake. You are not here to climb higher. You are here to return wiser. You are not here to fix yourself. You are here to remember that you were never broken. Welcome back. And if something inside you whispers yes to these words, then stay close. This space exists for you, for seekers, for rememberers, for those willing to return again and again with more light than they left with. If this journey touched something true, let it keep moving. Let it ripple. Let it bloom in someone else. And if it feels right, subscribe, stay connected. There is more ahead, much more, because the spiral never ends.